The mud-caked work boots left tracks on the polished marble as Jake Williams crossed the lobby of the Plaza Hotel in New York City. The faded flannel shirt, the beat-up canvas duffel bag tied with baling twine, everything about him screamed poverty. The manager in his Tom Ford suit looked down with contempt, while the front desk clerks in their colorful uniforms couldn't suppress their giggles. "If you can pay for the cheapest room, I'll give you the penthouse suite." The challenge, meant to humiliate, echoed through the lobby while elegant guests enjoyed the spectacle. Jake smiled, unzipped the duffel bag, and silence fell like a hammer. The stacks of $100 bills filled every inch of that worn bag. But it wasn't the money that silenced everyone. It was the words that followed. The story of a Kansas farmer turned millionaire who sold his land to fulfill a promise made at his wife's grave. A promise that would transform arrogance into shame and teach everyone that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in humanity. The Greyhound bus from Kansas wheezed through Manhattan morning traffic, crossing neighborhoods that gradually transformed from anonymous outskirts to the glittering heart of the city. Jake Williams sat in the back row, the canvas duffel on his lap, his gaze lost beyond the grimy window. 62 years of farm life had taught him the patience of seasons, the waiting for harvest, respect for times that cannot be rushed. The morning had started at 4 on his farm outside Topeka, with the rooster's crow he'd greeted for the last time before leaving. He'd walked among the wheat fields his grandfather had planted, touched the rich black soil he knew better than his own hands. That land, now worth a fortune, $22 million according to the assessment from the development corporation that bought half. But for Jake, that land was worth memories, not money. The first kiss with Mary Beth behind the barn, the laughter of kids now grown and distant, the harvest festivals with neighbors, summer evenings on the white-painted porch. He got off at Port Authority, clutching the duffel like a drowning man grabs a life preserver. The crowd swallowed him with the violence of a wave. Tourists with enormous backpacks, rushing office workers, street vendors hawking their wares. New York received him with its cosmopolitan indifference, where a Kansas farmer was just another face in the mass. The flannel shirt he wore told a story. He'd bought it at the Topeka Farmers Market 10 years back, when Mary Beth was still alive. She'd insisted on that pattern, saying the blue brought out his brown eyes. Since then, he'd worn it every Sunday, even after she was gone. The Wrangler jeans were patched at the knee. Mary Beth had mended them with infinite patience, laughing at his protests that he could buy new ones. The work boots still carried the Kansas dirt, as if a piece of his land wanted to accompany him on this mission. The canvas duffel was a family heirloom. His father had used it in '68 when he went to Vietnam. His mother had filled it with beef jerky and homemade cookies when he left for college. Mary Beth had packed her things in it when they got married. Now it contained something different, something that would astonish anyone who saw it. The journey from Port Authority to Fifth Avenue was a trip through the layers of New York. First, the working-class neighborhoods around Times Square, with their dollar pizza joints and discount stores, then the wider streets toward Midtown. Finally, the brazen elegance of Fifth Avenue. Jake walked slowly, not from tiredness, but from emotion. Mary Beth had always dreamed of walking down Fifth Avenue, sitting in one of those famous cafes, feeling like a lady for once. "One day I'll take you, Mary Beth," he'd always answered. "When we sell the harvest, when the kids are settled, always when, never now." And then the cancer came like a late frost, devastating everything in 6 months. In the last days, when the morphine no longer helped, Mary Beth had made him promise he'd make this trip for her. The Plaza Hotel appeared like a mirage of marble and gold. The Beaux-Arts façade rose with the solemnity of a palace, 19 floors of luxury looking haughtily at the bustling street. The 5 gold stars on the plaque gleamed like medals on a general's chest. It was the hotel where presidents had stayed, where movie stars celebrated their Oscars, where Wall Street titans decided the country's fate over aged whiskey. Jake stopped on the opposite sidewalk, studying the building. The windows with silk curtains, the balconies with wrought iron railings, the monumental entrance guarded by a doorman in livery who seemed from another era. The cars parked in front were a catalogue of world luxury: a midnight blue Bentley, 2 Ferraris, a vintage Rolls-Royce, a couple of latest model Teslas. A group of Chinese tourists photographed the entrance, led by a guide explaining the hotel's history in broken English. An Arab couple descended from a limousine, he in a gray silk suit, she in a dress that probably cost more than Jake's tractor. The doorman rushed to open the door for them, bowing slightly. Jake crossed the street with determination. Each step brought him closer to a world that didn't belong to him, but he had a mission to fulfill. The promise made to Mary Beth weighed more than any shame. Marcus Thompson, the doorman, saw him coming from afar. 35 years of service had taught him to categorize customers at a glance. New money flaunted, old money hinted, celebrities were bored, politicians conspired. But this was different. A farmer, no doubt. The clothes, the posture, even the way of walking betrayed rural origins. Marcus mentally prepared to redirect him to the service entrance or, more likely, send him away. A couple from Los Angeles in designer clothes was just leaving. The woman, platinum blonde with huge sunglasses despite it being morning, saw Jake and instinctively clutched her Hermes bag tighter. The man, spray-tanned with transplanted hair, made a wide detour to avoid him, as if poverty could be contagious. Jake didn't seem to notice. Or perhaps he'd learned long ago to ignore such gestures. He reached the entrance, and Marcus moved to intercept him. But the farmer was quicker. He entered with a confident step, as if he had every right to be there. The impact with the interior was like diving into another universe. The air conditioning maintained a perfect temperature that contrasted with New York's September heat. The perfume, a studied mixture of jasmine, vanilla, and something indefinably expensive, enveloped everything. The light filtered through Waterford crystal chandeliers created a golden, unreal atmosphere, as if time passed differently in that place. The floor was a masterpiece of polychrome marbles, drawing hypnotic geometric patterns. The columns of Vermont marble rose to a ceiling with frescoes narrating mythological stories in a waste of gods, nymphs, and cherubs. The burgundy velvet sofas were arranged in intimate groups, occupied by guests who looked like they'd stepped from the pages of a luxury magazine. In a corner, a pianist in tails softly played Gershwin on a Steinway grand piano. The discreet tinkling of china cups and crystal glasses created a soundtrack of whispered elegance. Some guests read financial newspapers in various languages, others conversed quietly, in what seemed to be an informal summit of some kind. Jake crossed this scene with the naturalness of someone crossing his own farmyard. The canvas duffle hung from his right hand, the twine creaking with each step. His boots, still damp with morning dew and dirty with soil, left barely visible tracks on the polished marble. The contrast was so stark it seemed like performance art, one of those conceptual provocations modern artists love. But there was nothing artificial about Jake. He was simply a man with a mission. The reception was a black marble counter veined with gold, at least 30 feet long, crowned by a monumental Venetian mirror. Behind it, 3 receptionists in coordinated but different uniforms managed guest arrivals with military efficiency. Jennifer Walsh, in cobalt blue uniform, was the veteran of the group. 27 years of pure ambition concentrated in a body sculpted by CrossFit and strict diets. The ash-brown hair was pulled into a bun that didn't have a hair out of place even after hours of work. The makeup was flawless, studied to look natural, but actually the result of an hour's preparation each morning. She came from Queens, a working-class borough she'd erased from her resume, inventing origins on the Upper East Side. Every night she returned to that shared apartment with two roommates, but every morning she transformed into this perfect creature who seemed born for this golden world. Ashley Martinez, in canary yellow uniform, was the rookie, 22 years old, fresh out of Cornell's hotel school, in her first important job. The green eyes still betrayed some wonder at this world, not yet hardened by the necessary cynicism. Her construction worker father had worked overtime to send her to study. Her seamstress mother had sewn and unsewn dresses to make her look presentable at interviews. She'd been there only 3 months and still got excited when a celebrity walked in. Victoria Chen, in crimson-red uniform, was the shift supervisor. 30 years old, 5 of them at the plaza, she knew every secret, every gossip, every vice of the regular guests. She'd learned to smile while internally cataloging, judging, despising. Her boyfriend was an ambitious lawyer who introduced her at dinners as director in the luxury sector, never as a receptionist. She dreamed of managing a hotel, having the power to decide who was worthy and who wasn't. The 3 women saw Jake approaching and exchanged glances that were a whole silent dialogue. Jennifer raised an eyebrow questioningly. Ashley bit her lip to keep from laughing. Victoria shook her head imperceptibly as if to say, "I'll handle this." But Jake was already at the counter. He set the duffel on the floor with a gentleness that contrasted with the worn appearance of the luggage. The sound of the twine against the marble resonated in the relative silence of the lobby, drawing the attention of several guests. An elderly lady with more diamonds than fingers lowered her reading glasses to observe better. A Japanese businessman interrupted his phone call. 2 Russian influencers pulled out their smartphones, smelling potential viral content. It was at that exact moment when fate, with its twisted sense of humor, brought Richard Blackstone, the hotel manager, onto the stage. Blackstone cleared his throat, making sure everyone could hear him. His honeyed, false tone filled the lobby as he suggested that perhaps the gentleman was looking for the bus station, that he'd made a mistake, that this wasn't a YMCA. The laughter began to spread like a malignant wave. The receptionists no longer held back. The guests on the sofas laughed openly. A lady from Connecticut in a mink coat commented loudly about certain people who don't know their place.
Enjoying the story? Give it a little like, and don't forget to subscribe. Now then, let's carry on.
The humiliation was orchestrated like a spectacle for the entertainment of bored rich people. Jake pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket, the reservation confirmation. Blackstone took it with 2 fingers as if it were contaminated, read the name and room type, then looked up with feigned surprise, asking if Mr. Williams knew that even the cheapest room cost $500 a night. That's when the manager had the idea that seemed brilliant to him. He turned to the lobby, raising his voice to announce that they had a special guest from the heartland, come to try city life. The cruelty of the next bet resonated like a whiplash. If the farmer could manage to pay for the cheapest room, he would give him the penthouse suite at $8,000 a night. The entire lobby burst into sarcastic applause. It was obvious he was playing with his prey before devouring it. But Jake calmly accepted, bent down, and unzipped the duffel bag. The silence that followed was absolute. The duffel was full of money, not loose change or crumpled bills, but neat stacks of $100 bills, layer after layer. A fortune that seemed impossible in such a humble container. Jake methodically extracted 10 stacks, placing them on the counter with the same naturalness he would have placed fresh eggs. Blackstone paled. The receptionist stood open-mouthed. The lady in mink dropped her purse. Panic replaced amusement as Jake began to speak in a calm voice. He told them he really was a farmer, that he'd worked the land for 40 years. But that land they so despised was worth $22 million, and he'd sold half to a development corporation. Then came the revelation that transformed mockery into shame. His wife, Mary Beth, had died the previous year of cancer. Dreaming of seeing New York, sleeping in a luxury hotel, being treated like a princess. He, too stingy, too attached to money, had never indulged her. Now he was here to fulfill a promise made at her grave. Jake's voice barely broke as he explained that the problem wasn't the money, but the fact that people are judged by appearances, that a man in flannel is considered inferior to one in Armani. The mistake was theirs, not his. From the duffel, Jake pulled documents that completely changed everyone's perception. First, an article from the New York Times. Kansas farmer millionaire donates $5 million to St. Jude Children's Hospital. The photo showed him in the same flannel shirt, shaking hands with the governor. More evidence of his philanthropy followed. Thank you letters from the New York Food Bank for $2 million, from Catholic Charities for $1 million, from an orphanage in Haiti. Jake explained that money was just paper if not used for good, a lesson learned too late from his wife, Mary Beth. That's when Margaret Vanderbilt, 85 years of old New York society, rose from the sofa and approached with trembling steps. She recognized in him the man who had saved her grandson with leukemia by funding the new oncology wing. She hugged him, her jeweled hands squeezing the farmer's calloused ones, thanking him through tears. The surreal scene broke something in the atmosphere. Other guests approached, some recognizing the story, others simply moved by the humanity of the moment. Blackstone seemed to shrink more and more as Jake continued his lesson. He pulled out a black-and-white photo of young Mary Beth, explaining that she would have laughed at the situation, that she would have said they were just people scared of real life. He addressed the receptionists, saying he didn't blame them. They were young and had learned that appearance is everything, but he hoped someday someone would treat them with more kindness. Jennifer broke down crying. Raised in a working-class neighborhood, daughter of a janitor, she had denied her origins to work in this hotel. Seeing Jake proud of his farming roots while she was ashamed of her own hit her deeply. Lawyer Harrison, a regular hotel guest, stepped forward to apologize on behalf of everyone. Others followed, including the Connecticut lady who confessed her father was a plumber and she'd spent her life hiding it. Jake responded that plumbers and farmers had built and fed America, that everyone deserved respect. The reception phone rang. It was Mr. William Astor, owner of the hotel. Someone had already uploaded a video to Instagram that was going viral. Hotel manager humiliates millionaire philanthropist farmer. He was on his way, would be there in 20 minutes. Blackstone picked up the phone with sweaty hands, knowing his career was over. Meanwhile, Jake calmly put the money back in the duffel, leaving only $8,000 for the suite. But then he declared he didn't want the suite. He just wanted to show how small and fragile the castle of arrogance they'd built was. Before leaving, he pulled stacks from the duffel. He gave $5,000 to Ashley, the young receptionist who'd had the courage to apologize, telling her to use it to study and become what she really wanted to be. Another $5,000 went to Marcus, the doorman from Brooklyn, who'd confessed to coming from Brownsville so he could send his kids to college. Ashley cried without being able to speak. Marcus, the imposing man, had tears running down his face. The silent revolution continued as masks fell one after another in the lobby, everyone beginning to remember where they came from, who they really were. When Astor arrived, the scene he found was completely different from expected. There was no trace of the initial arrogance. He went straight to Jake, offering his apologies for how he'd been treated. Mr. William, who had built his empire from a small motel, knew the value of hard work. He fired Blackstone on the spot, suspended the receptionists for a week, requiring them to do volunteer work at a soup kitchen. But Jake intervened with a proposal. Transform the hotel not in appearance, but in soul. Create a fund to host needy families free once a month, calling it the Mary Beth Fund. Astor immediately accepted the proposal, promising the Mary Beth Fund would become reality. Jake donated $100,000 on the spot to start it, explaining he wanted to allow other couples to realize the dream he'd denied his wife. The applause started with Margaret Vanderbilt and spread like a wave throughout the lobby. Everyone applauded, many cried. Blackstone slunk away to his already former office, forgotten and destroyed. An 8-year-old boy approached Jake asking if he was a superhero. The farmer knelt to answer that he was just a man who'd learned late what was really important: love, respect, kindness. Money was just paper, but a smile, a kind gesture that had true value. In the following days, the transformation was profound. Jennifer left the hotel after suspension and created an association to help young people from disadvantaged neighborhoods find work in tourism. Ashley used the $5,000 to enroll in university, studying social work. Marcus sent his son to study medicine, realizing a dream that seemed impossible. Victoria remained at the hotel but transformed, becoming responsible for the Mary Beth Fund, ensuring every hosted family had an unforgettable experience. Blackstone disappeared from the New York scene, his fall a warning to the entire luxury hotel sector. Mr. William revolutionized staff training. Every new employee had to do a month of volunteer work before starting, to remember they serve people, not wallets. 2 years later, the plaza had changed profoundly. The Mary Beth Fund had hosted 24 families, allowing those who couldn't afford it to live the New York dream. Jake returned every September, always in the same flannel shirt, received with genuine affection by all the staff. That particular September, he arrived with Sarah, a retired teacher widow he'd met at St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Mary Beth would have wanted him to keep living, he explained to friends at the hotel. Sarah had reminded him there was still beauty in the world. During dinner at the hotel restaurant, Jake stood for an announcement. He'd learned that anger is poison you drink, hoping others will die, while forgiveness is medicine for the soul. He'd learned it's never too late to start over, to love, to be happy. He donated another $2 million to expand the Mary Beth Fund, with the condition it also be open to lonely and elderly people who'd lost hope. The hotel should become a place where dreams come true for everyone, not just the rich. Margaret Vanderbilt, present at dinner, declared she'd known kings and queens, but true royalty she'd seen in a Kansas farmer in a flannel shirt. That night, Jake danced with Sarah in the lobby, where 2 years earlier he'd been humiliated, surrounded by genuine respect and affection. 10 years later, Jake's legacy lived on. The Mary Beth Fund had become a national model, replicated in dozens of hotels. Jennifer directed a foundation for inclusion in tourism. Ashley was a social worker specializing in disadvantaged families. Marcus's son was a recognized doctor who didn't forget his origins. Jake lived another 8 years with Sarah on his farm, transforming it into a refuge for children from the orphanage. When he died peacefully in his sleep at 70, he left a letter that became the Mary Beth Fund Manifesto. Money is just numbers on paper. True wealth lies in the love given, the respect shown, the kindness sown. It doesn't matter if you sleep in a penthouse or a barn, if you wear Armani or flannel. What matters is only how much good you've done, how many lives you've touched, how much light you've brought to others' darkness. Thousands attended his funeral. Farmers and senators, janitors and executives, all united in remembering a man who'd transformed humiliation into a lesson in humanity. On the coffin, next to the flowers, someone had placed the famous canvas duffel with the twine, now a symbol of how true wealth isn't in what you contain, but in what you give. The Plaza Hotel still keeps that duffel today, in a glass case in the lobby. Below, a golden plaque reads, "Jake Williams taught us that elegance of the heart is worth more than all the diamonds in the world." And every September, on the anniversary day, the hotel opens its doors free to 100 needy families. The receptionists receive them with genuine smiles. The manager personally shakes their hands, and for one night, luxury belongs to those who normally can only dream of it. Sarah lived another 5 years after Jake. Before dying, she donated the last remaining millions to create sustainable agriculture schools in Haiti. The last photo shows her smiling among Haitian children, wearing Jake's flannel shirt. The story of the farmer and the canvas duffle became legend, told in hospitality schools around the world. An eternal reminder that true luxury isn't excluding, but including, not humiliating, but elevating, not judging by appearances, but seeing the soul. And in that eternal New York, between old splendors and modern arrogances, Jake Williams's lesson lives on every time someone chooses kindness over contempt, humility over arrogance, love over hate. Because in the end, when we're all dust, it won't matter what hotel we slept in, but only how much love we left behind. Like if you believe true wealth is in the heart, not the wallet. Comment your experience. Have you ever judged someone by their appearance? Share to remind everyone that humility is worth more than arrogance. Subscribe for more stories that warm the heart and open the mind. Because in the end, when we're dust, it won't matter what car we drove or what hotel we slept in. It will only matter how much love we gave, how many lives we touched, how much kindness we sowed in the world.